In a prestigious high school, Takane is the definition of perfection. She dominates in academics, outshines in sports, and even secured the position of student council president, an impressive feat considering she's only a freshman. She's admired by everyone, respected by teachers, and practically untouchable. To put it simply, Takane is a goddess among students, and Koshi is the complete opposite. He's just below average. His grades are a mess, his presence is barely acknowledged, and he's practically a background character in his own school life. Yet despite the overwhelming gap between them, Koshi can't help but admire Takane from afar. They've gone to the same school since childhood, and in all that time, she's always been leagues above him. Naturally, she's never had a reason to notice him. At least, that's what he thinks. As Koshi drags himself to his usual lunch spot, lost in self-deprecating thoughts, he fails to notice the way Takane's gaze lingers on him before she walks off in another direction. He has no idea that in the near future, their relationship will change forever. And it all starts with lunch. Koshi's usual hideout is a forgotten sports supply room, a place where no one bothers him. As he eats his lunch, he checks his phone to see today's agenda and immediately regrets it. Today is the day they will be receiving their math grades, and he's fully expecting another disaster. But just as he's about to wallow in despair, the door creaks open. Koshi tenses as he realizes someone other than him is here. Quickly, he ducks behind a stack of boxes, peering out cautiously. His breath catches when he sees Takane. Before he can even process why someone like her would be here, she casually begins to undress. Koshi spins around, pressing himself against the supplies. His mind races, willing himself not to peep at her to give her some privacy. But he finds his resolve breaking when he hears the soft rustle of fabric hitting the floor. Against his better judgment, his eyes betray him, and he sneaks a glance. As the lunch break ends, students shuffle back to class. Koshi takes his seat, still trying to process everything. The teacher starts handing back graded exams, and Koshi braces himself for the worst. But when he gets his test back, he is pleasantly surprised to see that he actually passed the exam. Then something even more shocking happens. When Takane gets her paper back, she doesn't get 100%. The class falls silent. Whispers ripple through the room. The Queen of Perfection got a 98. Koshi watches her closely, wondering what might have happened. But before he can react further, something strange happens. The air around him shifts. He then sees a strange butterfly fluttering to where a door appears out of nowhere, floating in space. Strange lines begin to move, rewinding. In an instant, Koshi is back to where he is about to receive his test score. Koshi walks up to receive his test paper, trying to convince himself that what he just experienced was nothing more than a strange dream. The idea of him passing on the first try is already unrealistic enough, so maybe he imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was stress, exhaustion, or just a weird case of déjà vu. But as his eyes scan the page, his stomach twists. The score in front of him is exactly the same as the one from his vision. When the teacher calls out Takane, Koshi looks up, remembering how she scored a 98. But this time, there's no reaction, no whispers, no murmurs of disbelief, because Takane has scored a perfect 100. At the end of class, Koshi realizes that every bizarre thing that happened today seems to revolve around one person, Takane. So he decides to confront her about her test score in the student council room. When he enters, he nervously mentions that he saw her score a 98. The moment he mentions it, the air in the room shifts. Her posture remains composed, but there's something different now. A coldness settles in her expression. Her presence, once inviting, now feels suffocating. His back hits the wall before he even realizes it, and Takane is standing too close. Takane tries to ponder when she put her guard down and concludes that Koshi must have seen her plot in the sports supply room. She backs Koshi into a wall as he tries to come up with excuses. Suddenly she smiles, telling him that nothing can be done at this point and they need to come up with a deal to keep her secret. Koshi's mind is filled with worry. He thinks that Takane might find a way to expel him. So when she hands him a cup of water, he accidentally drops it due to being so nervous. Luckily, Takane manages to prevent herself from getting wet. Koshi scrambles to wipe away the spilled water from the floor, and the moment she decides the time is right, she displays her ability. She then begins to undress, and Koshi is suddenly brought into the dark space where the butterfly appears. The strange door is back, and as the butterfly enters, he sees a room of clocks that suddenly begin to rewind. Then reality snaps back into place, and Takane is drenched. Koshi stares, his brain unable to process what just happened. Koshi barely has time to process everything that just happened before Takane begins explaining. With the same confidence she always carries, she reveals the name of her ability, Eternal V-Card Road. She states without hesitation that it allows her to rewind time whenever she removes her plot. Just moments ago, she had taken off her plot on purpose, ensuring she would get hit by the spilled water, improving her power before his very eyes. Her tone remains steady as she explains that whenever she activates her ability, the plot she removes ceases to exist. It's erased from reality itself, and the reason Koshi remembers is that he saw her plot back in the storage room. That alone makes him an exception. Koshi's mind spins, trying to keep up, but his focus keeps slipping. The sheer absurdity of what she's saying mixes with the overwhelming awkwardness of the situation, making it nearly impossible to process anything properly. His mind refuses to settle, and yet Takane carries on as if this is nothing out of the ordinary. She recounts the first time her ability manifested. It was during a sports festival in the 5th grade, a day when she was expected to win without question. But just before the race, the bento she ate had already gone bad, causing her stomach unbearable pain. She tried to push through it, but her body slowed against her will, and for the first time in her life, she failed to take first place. The frustration of losing, the humiliation of coming second, was too much to bear. And then, just when she thought the day couldn't get worse, she peed herself in front of everyone. Desperate to escape the shame, she rushed to change, slipping off her soaked plot without a second thought. And in that moment, the world shifted. Time reversed. Suddenly, she was holding the flag meant for first place. From that moment on, she understood. This ability existed to ensure she never lost. And now she knows he remembers things no one else can. Takane continues, seemingly unaware of his growing panic. She casually complains about the inconvenience of always having to carry spare plot, saying it's a hassle to constantly be prepared for emergencies. But now, she has a solution. Koshi, with his ability to remember events before the rewind, is the perfect candidate. He will become her closet. Koshi freezes. He feels that the offer is completely absurd since it sounds like she is making him her own servant. His mind screams that he needs to get out of here, but before he can take a step back, Takane moves first. She tells him that by becoming her closet, he will no longer be just another forgettable face. He will be someone special. He will matter. However, Koshi still refuses to cooperate and turns to leave. Koshi barely makes a step toward the door before Takane moves to block his path, and they end up falling to the floor. For a brief moment, he is frozen in shock, his mind scrambling to process what just happened. But she suddenly lets out a piercing scream. The sound echoes through the halls, loud enough to reach the ears of every student nearby. When the door bursts open, they are met with a scene that leaves little room for interpretation. Gasps and shouts fill the air as several students grab Koshi, yanking him away from Takane. The girls in the crowd immediately pull out their phones, calling the police. Realization crashes down on Koshi like a ton of bricks. He's being framed. His mind races, trying to find a way out, but everything is happening too fast. The crowd's judgment is swift, and before he knows it, officials are already arriving, ready to take him away. Just as he is about to be dragged out of the room, Takane finally speaks, her voice soft and almost teasing. She asks him if he wishes for none of this to have ever happened. Swallowing his pride, he turns to her and begs her to use her power. Takane smiles, a victorious gleam in her eyes. She has him exactly where she wants him. If he wants her to save him, he has to agree. He has to become her closet. With no other choice, Koshi slowly agrees. A strange, surreal space of floating clocks and shimmering light surrounds them once more, signaling the rewind. Takane, now free of the previous events, takes full advantage of her victory. She explains his new role, clearly enjoying his discomfort. She teases him, making light of the situation as if trapping him into servitude is nothing more than a game. For his first task as her closet, she gives him an order. He has to put new plot on her. Since the one she removed was erased from existence, she now needs a replacement. She playfully blames him for the inconvenience, reminding him that she had to remove it for his sake. When he hesitates, she wastes no time in reminding him of his position. Begrudgingly, he digs into her bag and pulls out a pair of pink frilly plot. His hands tremble as he approaches her, the reality of what he's about to do setting in. Despite the absurdity of the situation, he knows he can't refuse. Takane, watching his every move, notices something peculiar. Despite the fact that he had openly stared at her plot earlier in the day, he now keeps his eyes firmly shut. Ever since he had entered the student council room, even when she had purposely exposed herself, he had made an active effort to avert his gaze. She had been certain that he, like any other boy, would have wanted to take in every detail, but instead, he had tried to respect her modesty, even when she had given him no reason to. She casually mentions that he is a gentleman, like back then, hinting they have met before. But before Koshi can dwell on her words, she gives him a new order, putting on her plot. This time, she challenges him to do it with his eyes closed. Koshi can't help but relive the day he agreed to become Takane's closet. The memory clings to him, haunting even his dreams. When he wakes up in a cold sweat, there's a fleeting sense of relief as he realizes it was just a dream, only for that illusion to shatter the moment his phone buzzes with a message from Takane. It's a brief reminder of his duties, curt and casual, followed by a photo of herself. As he makes his way onto the school grounds, he spots Takane surrounded by admirers. Koshi watches from afar, the image of the Takane from yesterday clashing violently with the girl he sees now. He wonders if that version, the one who stripped in front of him without shame, who forced him into servitude, is the real Takane, and this version is merely a well-rehearsed act. Lost in thought, he's caught off guard when Takane appears beside him, greeting him as though they're the best of friends. Whispers ripple through the students as they wonder why Takane would spare even a second for someone so unremarkable. Without breaking her smile, she leans in close and whispers a command into his ear. He is to report to the student council room before homeroom begins. Following her instructions, Koshi quietly steps into the student council office. She seems amused by his discomfort and reassures him, claiming they are partners. Takane hands him a small bag, and as Koshi hesitantly reaches inside, his fingers brush against something soft and he pulls out one of her plot. With the same unbothered tone, she instructs him to carry the bag with him at all times. Those are the replacement plots she'll need right after using her ability. It's his responsibility to put them on her the moment she's done so she doesn't lose time preparing for another rewind. She moves to lift her skirt to demonstrate, but Koshi quickly intervenes, urging her to stop. She meets his resistance with a thinly veiled threat, reminding him of the incident she saved him from, an incident she could easily unsave him from if she felt like it. Left with no real alternative, Koshi reluctantly agrees to do what she asks. Then with surprising sincerity, she admits that even for her, showing her plot is embarrassing. But it's only Koshi who sees it. She's willing to endure it. For a split second, Koshi feels a flicker of warmth, but he knows better than to trust her sudden vulnerability. When he voices his suspicion, Takane doesn't even bother to deny it. She laughs and admits that, yes, she's being manipulative. It's simply how she operates. Sensing their conversation is wrapping up, Koshi turns to leave. Later that day during literature class, Koshi finds himself unable to concentrate. His thoughts drift back to Takane and the strange power she wields. He wonders how he's supposed to keep track of her ability and how often she uses it. Just as the teacher calls on Takane to recite a verse from the poem, she rises from her seat with effortless grace and begins her performance. Her voice flows smoothly, each word measured and clear, her cadence controlled with the practiced precision of someone used to being in the spotlight. Her classmates are immediately drawn in by her presence, hanging on her every word. By the time she finishes, the room is filled with soft gasps of admiration, and even the teacher gives a nod of approval. Koshi observes the scene, seemingly relieved that her performance requires no interference from him, at least that's what he assumes. But then a light gust of wind drifts in through the windows, and with it comes a strange shift in the air. The atmosphere grows oddly still and quiet, almost like the pause before a storm. Feeling the breeze will heighten her performance, she suddenly announces to Koshi that she will use her ability, which confuses Koshi since it looks like her performance is already flawless. And in that instant, a flash of light, followed by the faint image of a butterfly passing through a glimmering doorway, fills their vision. Time rewinds, and they are back in the classroom at the exact moment Takane is called upon to perform. This time, she stalls ever so slightly, feigning the need to clear her throat. She waits until the breeze filters in once more, then begins reciting the poem again. Her timing is impeccable. With the soft wind blowing through the room, her voice seems to transcend the present, creating an illusion that the entire classroom has been transported to a different time. The words no longer sound like a simple recitation, but feel like a living memory being relived by everyone present. The students become completely absorbed, as if witnessing the poem's first recital, not by the original poet, but by Takane herself. When the final words leave her lips, silence blankets the room before the students break into thunderous applause. Takane quietly sits back down in her seat, casting a triumphant glance toward Koshi. Her expression makes it clear, this wasn't about correcting a mistake, it was about surpassing perfection. Koshi feels the pressure mount. Takane throws a crumpled piece of paper at the back of his head to remind him of his responsibility. He glances around, unsure how to proceed in the middle of class. Deciding it is impossible, he decides to wait till it's their break to hand her some plot. Takane, sitting just a few feet behind, shifts in her chair so that her skirt hikes up ever so slightly, making it clear that she's applying pressure in her own silent way. Koshi watches her in horror, knowing that she's doing it on purpose to pressure him into putting her plot on as fast as he can. Takane, so as to give Koshi an excuse to bend down, points out that he dropped an eraser, despite his eraser being in his pencil case. Remembering the way Takane had easily manipulated the situation before and framed him when he failed to follow her orders, Koshi realizes he has no choice but to comply. The risk of defiance is too great. Quietly, he reaches into his desk's side compartment and pulls out the small bag she entrusted to him. With his nerves on edge, he makes his way toward Takane's desk, pretending to retrieve the eraser she claimed he dropped. It's positioned perfectly, right in front of her chair. As soon as he's finished, he returns to his seat quickly, suppressing his rapid breathing and trying to calm the rush of adrenaline pulsing through him. Koshi surveys the room, expecting someone to have noticed something suspicious, but everyone is either preoccupied with the teacher or their own notes. He exhales deeply, and a small smile escapes his lips. For a moment, he feels triumphant, satisfied that he completed the task without attracting attention. At the end of their class, the teacher announces he'll be returning some homework. Koshi breathes a sigh of relief as he manages to be an effective closet so far. He glances at Takane and realizes that she seems uncomfortable. Glancing between her legs, he sees that he hadn't pulled the plot on all the way. He debates whether she's even aware of the problem, but the teasing glint in her eyes confirms that she knows, and worse, she expects him to fix it. His thoughts spiral. If he leaves it as it is, the plot might slip off when she stands to collect her return homework. her pristine image would be shattered. In another scenario, she could easily twist the situation to blame him for doing something inappropriate, causing a repeat of before and ruining his future for good. He questions whether he should allow her to continue manipulating him like this. Just as he resolves not to intervene, Takane's name is called. Before she can even rise from her seat, Koshi is already on his feet, walking straight to the front of the class. He speaks quickly, apologizing to the teacher for mishearing his name. The teacher, slightly confused but not concerned, tells him to bring Takane's homework back to her desk since he's already there. Koshi returns to her desk, placing the workbooks down, embarrassed for letting Takane manipulate him again. Takane, sitting calmly and utterly satisfied, gives him a knowing smile and offers a playful thank you. He turns to leave, eager to create some distance and let his heart settle. But before he can take a step away, Takane casually lifts both her feet and locks them around his ankles, effectively trapping him in place. Without raising her voice, she instructs him to finish the job properly this time, her tone calm but commanding. Koshi freezes in place, his eyes darting nervously around the room to ensure no one is paying attention to them. Just as he manages to slide the plot into place with his leg, someone suddenly calls his name from across the room. The sudden contact makes Takane let out a quiet, unexpected sound. Koshi quickly turns back to her, confused, concerned he may have heard her, but she quickly averts her gaze, her cheeks tinted a faint pink and her demeanor far less composed than usual. Back in the student council room, she praises Koshi for completing his duties without getting caught and congratulates him on his successful first day as her closet. Koshi, still tense from everything that happened, admits that he nearly passed out from the stress. Surprisingly, Takane apologizes for pushing him so hard on his first day, her tone unusually soft. Curious, Koshi asks what she would have done if he hadn't stood up to deliver her paper earlier. Takane admits with a smirk that she hadn't planned anything at all. She was completely confident he would act in her favor. She flips the question back at him, asking why he did it. Koshi fumbles for a response, unsure of his own motivations. Takane decides to answer for him, suggesting it's because he doesn't want anyone else to see her plot but him. The bold suggestion causes him to go quiet, caught off guard. He tries to deny it, but doesn't know what else to say. Takane, smiling with amusement, says she wouldn't mind if he was a little possessive. His face burns at her words, and in an effort to change the subject, he brings up the strange noise she made earlier. She immediately denies making any such sound, brushing it off with a suspiciously quick response. Later that night, Takane returns home and begins packing her bag for tomorrow. She takes her time, carefully choosing which pair of plot to bring, giving more thought than usual, not just for function, but also considering which ones she thinks Koshi would like best. Takane is asked by the teacher to bring a tall pile of activity booklets to another class. She accepts the task without hesitation, her expression calm and composed. Almost immediately, a few of her classmates, eager to gain even a sliver of her attention, offer to carry the materials for her. From his seat, Koshi watches the scene unfold, noting how naturally admired and adored she is by her peers. Just as he settles in to watch her leave, he hears her decline their classmates' offer of aid and sees her take off her plot. He then feels that now familiar sensation, time rewinding. Before he can process why, they are thrown back to the moment her classmates first offer to help. Koshi, startled, gets to his feet, trying to anticipate what Takane expects of him. He recalls her firm words about his duties as both her servant and her closet, and suddenly it becomes clear. She wanted him to be the one offering help, not anyone else. Panicked and determined to fulfill his duties, he rushes to her side and offers to carry the workbooks for her. Once they're out of view, Takane stops him in the hallway. Her voice is firm but not cold as she scolds him for hesitating. She reminds him that she doesn't use her ability for trivial corrections. Everything she rewins is for a purpose, and it's his job to be ready, not reactive. He reminds himself once more why he agreed to stay near her, why it's important to keep her secret and support her role. They each take half the pile of workbooks and begin walking toward their destination. Along the way, they are intersected by a crowd of Takane's admirers, each one eager to lend assistance or offer praise. Koshi can't help but stare in awe. Even outside the classroom, Takane is a figure of worship. But what impresses him more is her ability to handle the crowd gracefully. She doesn't just deflect their help, she compliments them on recent achievements, calling each student by name and encouraging them with small, thoughtful remarks. Koshi trails beside her silently, caught off guard by her attentiveness. Later, when they're alone in a quiet, empty room, Takane scolds him again, this time more gently, reiterating the importance of reading her signals and supporting her efforts seamlessly. As they continue their errand, Koshi tries to steer the conversation away from his shortcomings. He mentions how smoothly she handled the crowd and compliments her public presence. Takane accepts the praise, explaining that it's only natural for someone who wants to work in the AV industry someday. She adds that her role as student council president means something to her. It's not just about appearances, but about building relationships and leaving a lasting impression. Koshi's curiosity deepens when he realizes something. She had called each student by name. He asks if she actually knows everyone personally. Takane confirms it proudly, explaining that she made it her mission to memorize the names and basic profiles of every student after becoming president. To her, it's only fair. If the entire student body remembers her, then she should return the favor. As they head back to class, Koshi follows a few steps behind, watching how her hair moves with every step and feeling a strange mix of admiration and warmth toward her. He still doesn't understand all of her motives, but slowly, a part of him begins to believe in her effort. Takane then says that one of her best tricks is memorizing students' simplified profiles. Takane continues down the stairs and casually recites Koshi's entire student profile, listing off even the more embarrassing details without a second thought. She mentions his weak will, poor academic standing, and lack of friends. Koshi exclaims that her version of a simplified profile has way too much detail. His comment earns him a sharp look from Takane, as if accusing him of implying she put extra effort into memorizing his file. Realizing he may have crossed a line, Koshi apologizes quickly. Takane doesn't let it go so easily, using the moment to tease him, accusing him of being a pervert and suggesting he's more interested in her body than he admits. Koshi refuses to look at her and denies everything. Trying to escape the awkward conversation, he walks ahead of her down the stairs. Takane, not one to be ignored, kicks him just enough to make him stumble. As he lands on the stairs, she positions herself right in front of him, blocking his view and asking what he'd do if she actually let him look at her body. Koshi avoids answering, so Takane decides to push him even more by going directly on top of him and repeating her question. He begs her to stop messing with him, nearly slipping up with a more honest response. He manages to redirect his answer, saying he'd rather get to know her first before anything else. Takane laughs, amused by his attempt to be serious, and backs off, saying she was only joking. She then teases him again, hinting that his response might mean he's open to the idea of dating her. Koshi follows behind her, still overwhelmed and unsure of what just happened. As he tries to catch up, he trips again, this time hard enough to knock him out. When he comes to, Takane is hovering over him. They're now in the infirmary. She explains that the fall was worse than expected, and that she had to rewind time just a little to soften the blow, but it still landed them in the nurse's office. She then pulls him back to her, his head now resting on her lap, and while holding him there, casually continues their earlier conversation. She concludes that he's obviously serious about wanting to know her better. Koshi sits up in a panic, realizing it's already after class and that he's missed his remedial sessions, especially gym, which he had actually been trying to improve in. Stating how serious Koshi was about improving in the gym, Takane takes it upon herself to step in. Without warning, she volunteers to supervise the remedial class, catching everyone off guard. Her presence brings a new energy to this session, and the rest of the students immediately push themselves harder, eager to impress. Koshi, on the other hand, struggles. He's dead last, trailing behind everyone despite his efforts. Takane notices and calls him over. She moves directly in front of him, adjusting his posture and explaining how to run more efficiently. But Koshi can barely focus. Her body pressing close to his is too much of a distraction. Takane picks up on it and snaps him out of it, telling him to get his head in the game. Despite the help, Koshi still ends up last. Worse, he doesn't even make the time cut off. The others mock him without mercy. He's crushed. That's when Takane resets everything. Her voice calmly announces that they'll do it over until he gets it right. Suddenly, Koshi's back at the starting line. Everyone starts running again. Koshi turns toward Takane, unsure if he should perform his usual closet duties now, but she tells him to worry about it after he finishes the run. A few minutes into the run, Koshi already feels fatigue creeping in. His legs are burning and he's about to give up when Takane suddenly appears on a bicycle, riding beside them and cheering the class on. Her enthusiasm catches him off guard. She's really doing her best for him. He feels a pang of guilt. He wanted to succeed, and now she's here helping him try again. Then he sees Takane rising up on the pedals, her skirt fluttering dangerously in the wind. Koshi panics. If she keeps standing like that, the guys behind her are going to get a full view. Without thinking, he bolts forward when she passes him, pushing his exhausted body to run faster just to block anyone's view. The finish line comes up before he realizes it. He collapses after crossing it, chest heaving, completely spent. Takane walks up to his collapsed form and reminds him to do his job. Still catching his breath, Koshi helps her with her plot and blinks in disbelief when she tells him he was first. He hadn't even noticed. He was so focused on protecting Takane's modesty that he didn't realize he'd outrun everyone. He admits it feels good, even if he's still far from her level. Takane seems genuinely pleased with his progress and tells him it's time to go home. Later that evening, Koshi gets home and realizes he still has Takane's plot bag. He thinks about giving it back tomorrow. He idly wonders what kind of plots Takane owns and tries to sneak a peek, but suddenly his phone rings. Takane's on the other end and she casually asks about the bag, adding that without her workout plot, she can't go running like she planned. Koshi immediately senses that she's asking him to bring it over, so he decides to do so since her home is nearby. Before he leaves his home, he suddenly thinks that this might be all a test if he knows how to act like a proper closet. He reminds himself that he's supposed to act as a closet, a role meant strictly for school-related situations. Anything beyond that feels like crossing a line. After all, Takane doesn't need a closet at home, and certainly not an errand boy. But then his phone lights up indicating he received a message. Takane has sent him a string of images, suggestive ones. Each photo is paired with a teasing message about how much she needs that specific plot, complaining that the others just don't perform as well. She insists she can't focus without it and continues to press the idea that Koshi, as her closet, should already be on his way. Then another image arrives, Takane clearly already outside. Koshi takes a better look and realizes she is without her plot. Koshi's heart sinks. He imagines the worst, some stranger catching a glimpse, or worse, trying to take advantage of her. But he immediately stops himself. Takane is not helpless. If anything, she's stronger, smarter, and more capable than most people. She could defend herself better than he could. However, a sudden urge to protect her drives him to leave his house and bolt towards the park. When he arrives at the park, slightly out of breath, he finds her calmly seated on a bench. She looks up at him and doesn't miss a beat, scolding him for being late. She then softens, thanking him for following through. She points out that he's now acting like her closet even outside of school, a detail that she seems oddly pleased about. Takane teases him about his thoughts, clearly enjoying the idea that he was imagining all kinds of things. Koshi insists he wasn't. He only came because he was genuinely worried something might happen to her, and he felt responsible. Takane goes quiet for a moment and turns her back to him, her cheeks flushing. Koshi thinks he might upset her, but before he can say anything, she turns around with a small, honest smile, one that's completely different from her usual smug expressions. She thanks him sincerely and Koshi freezes. For a second, it feels like the world slows down. But just as quickly, she shifts the energy again, telling him he should feel honored to see this side of her. Koshi doesn't know how to respond. Deep down, he wonders if the only reason he's special is because he remembers her ability. Despite the possibility, he finds himself wanting to stay in his current role. Before he can sink deeper into that thought, Takane snaps him out of it by asking if it's okay for him to keep worrying about her. Then she reaches out for her bag. When he hands it over, she notices how warm it is. Koshi had been clutching it the entire way here. With a sly grin, she throws in one more tease, accusing him of doing something inappropriate with it. Koshi turns red, stammering in denial. She just laughs, clearly satisfied with his reaction, and continues her walk home with Koshi following her, hoping to clear his name. Swim class begins with a splash of excitement. Takane easily defeats a member of the school's swim team, someone who has been rigorously training since joining. Her victory is so clean and confident that the whole class erupts in awe, unable to believe how effortlessly she glides past her opponent. Yet despite the cheers, Takane doesn't look the least bit satisfied. Without warning, she announces a redo, and before Koshi can even question her decision, the familiar sensation of time rewinding hits him like a wave. When the moment resets, they're back at the start of the race, and this time, Takane chooses to swim using the backstroke. Koshi watches quietly, noticing the change in her movement and inevitably her form. The backstroke gives him an unintended but clearer view of her body, and while he tries to maintain his composure, he quickly realizes he's been staring. Embarrassed, he turns away, his heart thudding with anxiety as he glances around to make sure no one caught him ogling. Once again, Takane finishes in first place. She exits the pool with grace and approaches Koshi directly, already reading his expression. She asks why he didn't question her decision to rewind time despite winning earlier. Koshi, still flustered, simply says he didn't have time to ask. Takane explains that it wasn't just about winning, it was about how she won. She wanted to make a lasting impression, not just cross the finish line first. Her backstroke, she claims, added more flair to the moment. Then she playfully leans in closer and asks if he prefers the backstroke over freestyle. Koshi stiffens. If he admits he liked the backstroke, it's like confessing he enjoyed the view. But before he can fumble out a response, Takane circles in front of him and teases him mercilessly for getting caught looking. His ears burn red as he tries to shift the topic. In a desperate attempt to change the subject, Koshi asks how she was able to use her ability during the swim, noting that she didn't appear to be wearing any plot. Amused by his honesty, Takane tells him to look closely. He realizes she was wearing the special plot to prevent the tent from showing. Koshi, now fully flustered, can't hide the overwhelmed look on his face. Takane smiles teasingly at him and tells him to meet her after class. Later that afternoon, the two of them head to a department store and Koshi finds himself reluctantly standing in the women's plot section. He's overwhelmed, unsure where to rest his gaze without seeming pervy. Takane, of course, revels in his discomfort and casually tells him to help her choose new plots since he's the one who has to put them on her anyway. Koshi tries to be agreeable, knowing full well that resistance only leads to more teasing. He closes his eyes and reaches out, randomly selecting a set of plots from the rack. When he turns to show her, he is met with teasing, which confuses him. When he opens his eyes to peek, he lets out a horrified squeak. He's picked something very revealing and wildly inappropriate. Koshi, embarrassed by his earlier impulsive pick, hastily returns the revealing plot to the rack and tries to approach things more seriously. After a few moments of thoughtful browsing, his eyes land on a light blue pair. It's simple but elegant, and for some reason, it just feels right. Without overthinking it, he hands it to Takane. Takane raises an eyebrow at his choice but seems genuinely intrigued. She asks him why he picked it, but Koshi, trying to dodge potential teasing, just shrugs and says there wasn't any special reason. She then announces she's going to try it on and, to Koshi's surprise, drags him along into the fitting room. She reassures him nonchalantly that she's wearing dark tights underneath so he won't see anything inappropriate. Even with her being technically covered, Koshi turns red instantly and refuses to look, turning away in panic. Amused by his reaction, Takane keeps teasing him, coaxing him to finish the task he's become all too familiar with. The moment overwhelms him and he passes out. Though Takane was initially concerned when he fainted, she quickly returns to her usual self once he wakes up, playfully mocking him for collapsing during a simple task he's supposedly trained for. Later, while they're alone in the elevator, Takane circles back to the question. She demands, more forcefully this time, to know why he chose that specific plot. With her hands slammed against the wall beside him, cornering him, Koshi finally caves. He admits that the color reminded him of the sky and the sea, both of which felt fitting for someone as elegant and distant as Takane. But as soon as the words leave his mouth, he realizes how silly and childish it sounds. Takane doesn't say anything immediately. The elevator doors open and she walks out without reacting, leaving Koshi frozen in uncertainty. Regret sinks in. He rushes after her and, a little out of breath, asks her if she even likes the plot. She eyes the package in her hands and quietly admits she does, mainly because she doesn't have to put it on, he does the work. The next day, Koshi arrives at school despite catching a cold. He drags himself through the day, and by the time classes end, he's ready to collapse. On his way out, his legs feel wobbly and his vision blurry. He feels like he's about to fall over. That's when Takane appears beside him without a word, slipping an arm around his elbow to steady him. She tells him not to be stubborn and insists on walking him home, mentioning that her house isn't too far from his anyway. Upon entering Koshi's room, Takane takes a curious look around, clearly surprised by how neat and organized it is. Her curiosity quickly takes over and she starts exploring the space more freely, even going so far as to open up his laptop. She clicks through the files, obviously expecting to find something incriminating or perverted, but her expression grows more disappointed the deeper she digs. There's nothing there that satisfies her teasing instincts. Koshi notices and rushes over in panic, slamming the laptop shut and accusing her of only helping him home so she could snoop around his room. Takane denies the accusation with her usual cool demeanor, insisting that she came purely out of responsibility. According to her, if he gets too sick to carry out his duties as her closet, her day would suffer. So nursing him back to health is a matter of self-preservation, not curiosity. She then starts asking about his health habits, specifically his appetite. When Koshi admits that he hasn't been eating much lately, she frowns at his stubbornness. Ignoring his protests, she announces she'll make him something healthy. Half joking, half serious, she teases that she'll cook wearing only an apron, just to keep him motivated. When she sees the mental image clearly reflected in his embarrassed expression, she piles it on, adding that she'll also feed him personally and even wipe the sweat off his body. As his face burns redder with each word, she playfully hints that if he gets enough energy back, maybe he can even enjoy some other activities before bed. Koshi, overwhelmed, tries to push her out of the room, insisting she go home before she catches his cold. Takane pauses, realizing that prolonged exposure might actually get her sick, and casually uses her ability. The next thing Koshi knows, he's standing in his room beside a low table, now with a freshly prepared meal in front of him. Takane stands by the door, giving him a list of instructions before leaving. She promises to check in on him again later, and he wonders if she rewound time just to erase the teasing. Now the food is proof she cared enough to prepare something for him. He takes a tentative bite and is immediately surprised by how good it tastes, especially considering how he hadn't felt hungry at all earlier. As he eats, he reflects on Takane's contradictory behavior, how she effortlessly switches from being seductive and playful to genuinely caring and thoughtful. It confuses him, and he wonders if she only acts this way because he's her closet or if maybe there's something more to it. After he finishes eating and settles into bed, Takane returns quietly and begins gathering the empty dishes. When he tells her the food was good, she gives a small, satisfied response. Just as he begins to relax again, he's startled to find her slipping under the covers beside him. Wide-eyed, he demands an explanation, but she calmly insists it's for his own benefit. He needs to stay warm to recover quickly. Koshi tries to argue, but before he can fully protest, she uses her ability again. Time jumps, and they're now back in bed together. Takane explains matter-of-factly that she redid their PE class that day, ensuring she didn't sweat much so she wouldn't stink beside him. Now, she says, there's no reason for him to be uncomfortable. Seeing that Koshi was still displaying resistance, Takane wondered aloud if he would have preferred her smelling sweetier instead. Koshi quickly shut that down, saying it had nothing to do with sweat and expressed frustration at being teased even while he was sick. He turned away from her, asking her to go home, clearly no longer in the mood to indulge her antics. But Takane didn't budge. Instead, she slid fully under the blanket and pressed up against him, saying she was being serious and wanted to take care of him. She added that he could think of her as a warm water bottle if it helped as she scooted closer. Koshi's panic kicked in. There was no way he could think of her that way, not when the most beautiful girl in school was lying beside him. He desperately tried to think of anything else, but her warmth and proximity made it impossible. With her body pressed to his, Takane finally apologized for teasing him earlier, especially about his condition. Koshi started to turn toward her only for Takane to gently pull his head to her plot, claiming it was for oxytocin release. She explained that skin contact helps people relax and feel better. Despite the embarrassment, he slowly began to feel safe and relaxed in her arms. The sincere apology, paired with her unexpected gentleness, made a deeper impact than he expected. His thoughts wandered to her again. Despite her usual composed and confident demeanor, he started to see the human side of her more clearly. As he felt himself drifting off, he mumbled a question about her odd kindness, wondering if it's only a trick to keep him on the hook. Takane was caught off guard. She hesitated, then softly asked what kind of answer he would want to hear. But by then, Koshi had already fallen asleep. She blinked in surprise and softened her gaze as she looked down at him. Eventually, she started her walk home alone. Takane was suddenly hit with a memory as a group of kids ran past her. As a child, she had always been on her own. Her peers avoided her, and she often walked home in silence. One afternoon, she stopped to feed a stray cat, and that's when Koshi, awkward and kind even back then, had approached and offered his milk to the animal too. Later, in her room, she lay on her bed wondering about Koshi's question. Kuro, the same black cat from her childhood who she eventually adopted, approached her, hoping for her attention. As she plays with Kuro, she begins to think Koshi is silly to think she'd go through all that effort just to keep him as her closet. Back at his place, Koshi eventually stirred awake and noticed a message from Takane on his phone. She had already left, letting him know there was food for him in the fridge. He slowly got up, reheated the meal, and ate it, the taste and warmth reminding him of how she cared for him earlier that day. His thoughts lingered on her again, on her contradictions, her teasing, her kindness, and he couldn't help but wonder how much of it she truly meant. On their usual walk to school, Koshi is blindsided by the realization that a certain homework assignment is due that day, a critical one that, if missed, would land him in remedial summer classes. Panic sets in immediately, but Takane, surprisingly sympathetic, expresses concern not for him but for the teachers who'd have to tutor someone like Koshi over the break. To spare them, she casually offers to help him finish the homework during lunch, but her offer comes with a condition that makes Koshi quickly reject the idea. She notes that perhaps their recent long-distance run had sparked something in him, some drive or motivation she hadn't seen before. Still, she reminds him not to neglect his duties as her closet, no matter how busy he gets. Throughout the day, Koshi is a flurry of focus, careful to keep his notebook hidden from teachers. But frustration soon mounts, academics never came easily to him, and the looming deadline only worsens his anxiety. Mid-class, he looks up from his notes just in time to see a minor incident unfold at the front. Takane, writing an answer on the board, is lightly bumped by their teacher, resulting in her writing a slightly incorrect character. For a brief moment, Koshi sees it in her eyes. She's considering using her ability to rewind time, but then she doesn't. Instead, she cleverly reworks the character into an unexpected, but technically correct solution, earning a wave of impressed murmurs from the class. Later during break, he overhears another subtle moment. A girl approaches Takane to thank her for suggesting a smartwatch as a gift for her boyfriend. It had been a hit, but she expresses mild regret that a newer model was released shortly after. Koshi watches closely. Takane's fingers twitch, her eyes shift. She's clearly weighing whether to reset the day and offer the newer model instead. But again, she resists. Instead, she pulls out her phone and offers a simple present-day solution: trade-ins. In art class, Koshi continues to observe her. There are subtle signs, moments where she hesitates, each time clearly an internal battle against the urge to use her ability. By the end of the school day, Koshi triumphantly submits his homework, feeling a wave of relief. As he steps out of the teacher's office, he notices Takane standing nearby, swaying slightly, a faint flush color in her cheeks. Concerned, he rushes over to check on her. She brushes off his worries, saying there's nothing about today she would want to redo. But Koshi can see through her facade. He gently kneels in front of her, urging her to use her ability if it means easing her pain. Still, she refuses, stubborn as ever, trying to convince him that today had gone fine. But eventually, she falters, quietly admitting that she feared rewinding the day would mean he wouldn't finish his homework. Koshi remains firm, insisting that Takane use her ability to undo the toll the day had taken on her. Eventually, she gives in, but only on one condition: that he be the one to activate her ability for her. Still, she makes one last attempt to dissuade him, reminding him that if she resets time, he'll need to redo all his homework. Koshi responds with more confidence than usual, telling her it's fine. He now knows most of the answers and can complete it faster the second time. What matters more is that she feels better. Takane stares at him for a moment, then nods, allowing him to activate her power. Though slightly nervous, Koshi closes his eyes and activates her ability. The familiar, disorienting sensation of time rewinding washes over both of them. But when it stops, Koshi looks around and realizes nothing major has changed. It's still the end of the school day. Confused, he asks Takane why they didn't go back further. She calmly explains that she only rewound time by a few minutes to just before he found her exhausted. Rewinding any more would have forced him to redo everything, and she didn't want to erase the effort he put into completing his work. She admits she'd rather handle things differently next time and offers to tutor him through his summer assignments so they won't end up in the same situation again. True to her word, during the summer break, Takane spends several days tutoring Koshi at her house. On one such day, despite having just been taught, Koshi repeatedly gets the answers wrong. Takane, clearly frustrated, sighs and uses her ability to rewind the session, allowing him to redo the worksheet. She casually complains about her mom being away, noting that if her mother were home, she would have made sure things were more accommodating for guests. That's when it hits Koshi. They're completely alone in her house. The realization flusters him, being in such close proximity to someone like Takane, who's beautiful and unpredictable, makes him self-conscious. He tries to focus on the worksheet, but is immediately startled when Takane appears behind him, scolding him for making another mistake. Before he can react, she rewinds time again, telling him to start over. By the time the sun starts to dip below the horizon, Takane checks his progress. Seeing that he's only halfway done, she playfully accuses him of dragging things out on purpose so he can spend more time with her. Koshi fumbles to deny it, clearly flustered, but she nonchalantly mentions that he's not actually alone with her in the house. There's a third resident, her cat. Koshi expresses interest in seeing her cat, but informs her that he can't own one himself due to his mom's allergy. He politely asks to meet her cat anyway, hoping it might serve as a break from their intense study session. Initially, she refuses, warning that he'll just get distracted again. Koshi tries to bargain, saying that seeing the cat would motivate him to work faster. With a reluctant sigh, she stands up from her bed to go retrieve her pet, muttering something softly as she exits, something Koshi doesn't quite catch. To his surprise, when she returns, she's not holding a cat. Instead, she's wearing cat ears and a collar herself. She nonchalantly informs him that her real cat is currently playing outside, so she'll have the cat in the meantime to help motivate him. Without missing a beat, she gets into character, lounging and stretching like a lazy feline, her expression distant and playful. Koshi, completely flustered, tries his hardest not to look at her so he can concentrate on the worksheet in front of him. But Takane, amused by his resistance, starts crawling closer, purring and nuzzling up to him just enough to draw out a reaction. Eventually, Koshi can't take it anymore and pleads with her to stop. She notices the redness creeping up his neck and to the tips of his ears, and satisfied with the effect she's had, agrees to ease off. Though she admits she's enjoying the role too much to stop entirely just yet. With a teasing grin, she stretches her arms and then sprawls across his lap like a lounging cat, clearly having fun at his expense. Despite the distractions, Koshi finally manages to complete the homework by nightfall. As she walks him to the door, Takane complains that they only managed to get through one worksheet after spending the entire day together. Still, Koshi is genuinely grateful for her help and thanks her sincerely. But as he opens the door to leave, they're both greeted by the sound and sight of heavy rain. Takane quickly tells him to stay over, noting that the weather report predicted rain through the night. Koshi tries to be polite and offers to sleep in the hallway, but Takane tells him there's a spare room. She casually adds that she'll warm up some food for him and even jokes about helping him bathe. Just then, the sound from another room alerts them. Takane's real cat has returned. She offers to go get him so Koshi can finally meet him. When she comes back holding a sleek black cat, she introduces the feline as Kuro. Koshi's eyes light up at the sight, and Takane watches him expectantly, hoping for a sign of recognition. But Koshi simply marvels at how adorable and well-groomed the cat is, praising its shiny fur. As Takane stands there frozen in disappointment, the room is plunged into darkness due to the rain. Takane quickly regains her composure after the lights go out, brushing off the momentary shock and declaring that the power will probably return soon. She suggests they make the most of the situation. She then sits back down on her bed and orders Koshi to entertain her with a story. Takane is disappointed by his hesitation and narrows her request. She wants a story from their elementary school days, admitting that despite being classmates since childhood, she doesn't remember much about him. Trying to guide him closer to a specific memory, Takane brings up the topic of what he used to do after school, clearly hoping he'll recall a certain rainy afternoon and a small black cat. But Koshi simply smiles and begins reminiscing about going to friends' houses and playing monster hunting games. This visibly irritates Takane, so she urges him to try harder to dig deeper into his heart for more meaningful memories. But Koshi only shrugs, reaffirming that those afternoons spent with friends were his fondest times. Letting out an annoyed sigh, Takane stands and grabs a water bottle. Instead of offering it to him right away, she takes large gulps from it, deliberately letting droplets spill down the bottle and onto the floor. She finishes the bottle with a dramatic breath and points toward the small puddle on the floor with her toes, telling him he's free to help himself if he's thirsty. Koshi stares at her, baffled by the passive-aggressive gesture, unsure why she's so frustrated. Returning to her bed, Takane reclines and demands another story. When Koshi begins recounting the time he earned a ridiculous nickname in 4th grade, she immediately cuts him off. Under pressure and now thoroughly confused, Koshi's thoughts begin to spiral. He realizes she's not giving him any real time to gather his thoughts, and with a polite tone, he asks if he can use the shower, anything to get a break. Takane nods and walks off to prepare it for him, giving him a short moment of peace. While she's away, Koshi gently strokes Kuro's fur, enjoying the rare calm. But the moment is short-lived. Takane soon returns, casually announcing that she ended up using the last of the towels and supplies herself. Hours pass, and Koshi still struggles to think of a story that will satisfy her. He glances over and finds that Takane has dozed off, waiting for him. Kuro, now curled up on his lap, snoozes peacefully, and something about the scene nudges a distant memory loose. Softly, Koshi begins speaking to no one in particular, describing a rainy afternoon from his childhood where he had shared a quiet moment with a girl while they both fed a stray black cat. Takane stirs at the sound of his voice and quietly smiles as she sits up. At last, he remembered, but not entirely. He speaks fondly of the girl and the cat, but doesn't seem to connect the memory to the present. Facing away from him, Takane asks why he doesn't consider that day to be one of his fondest. Koshi admits that the girl had once confessed her feelings, but he had been too stunned to respond. After that day, both she and the cat vanished from his life. He had gone back to their meeting place, but it was always empty. Takane turns to face him, curiosity and anticipation in her eyes. She asks him what he would do if he ever met that girl again. Koshi looks at her directly, and for a moment, there's hope in her eyes, until he asks her if she has a clue about who the girl is. Takane masks her disappointment and decides not to correct him. Even if he hasn't put the pieces together, the memory is still alive in him, and that's enough for now. Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder shakes the room. Takane flinches, trying to cover her reaction with a mocking comment accusing Koshi of being the one scared. But another flash of lightning and a louder rumble makes her jump again, and this time she instinctively throws her arms around him. Koshi falls but otherwise remains frozen as Takane clings to him. In that moment, it becomes clear to him, Takane had been prolonging the evening not out of obligation or mischief, but because she hadn't wanted to face the storm alone. Embarrassed but comforted, she buries her face into his shoulder and tells him to forget it anyway. Takane, still clutching him as another wave of thunder rolls in, allows herself a small, hidden smile. After what seems like forever, the lights finally return. Takane stands up, casually announcing that she will make dinner, but only for herself since she's still upset with Koshi for forgetting their past. But after seeing how upset Koshi is, she decides to make enough for two. Before leaving the room, she proposes a game to lighten the mood. They will pretend to be newlyweds, since there's no one else to entertain them in the house. The rules are simple. They have to act like a married couple, and if either of them breaks character, the loser will face a punishment. Takane decides the punishment will be eternal singlehood, an idea that immediately draws a strong reaction from Koshi. Unfazed, she coolly reminds him that with his current chances of finding love, he has nothing to lose. She then leaves the room with a playful remark telling him to join her when he is ready. After a few moments, Koshi walks into the kitchen and is stunned to see Takane wearing an apron. Out of habit, he refers to her by her school title, which nearly cost him the game. Fortunately, she decides to let it slide as his first offense. She reminds him that, as newlyweds, they should be more familiar with each other, prompting him to call her by a nickname like how she calls him Honey since the game started. Debating on what to call her, he settles for simply calling her Takane, which makes him flustered since first names are reserved for people with close relationships. Takane, in contrast, responds without hesitation, as if it is the most natural thing in the world. Still reeling from the informality, Koshi awkwardly points out that she should wear more protective clothing while cooking. She teasingly agrees, adding that he could help her change into something more suitable, and orders him to do so. As Koshi finishes doing her demands, she then asks him if he could stir the sauce so it won't burn. Determined to be useful, Koshi begins stirring the pot, but his attention keeps wandering back to Takane. Her presence is too distracting. Eventually, she notices the stew starting to burn and quickly uses her ability to rewind time, just far enough to reset the moment before it starts going wrong. She scolds him lightly, frustrated at how useless he's in cooking. With her guidance and a few timely corrections, the meal is finally ready. Koshi is genuinely impressed by the variety and presentation. As he compliments her skills, Takane sits down beside him and positions herself closely. She insists on feeding him the first bite. Koshi is taken aback and quickly insists that he can feed himself just fine. Takane, almost innocently, wonders what the problem is. They are supposed to be married. It takes Koshi a moment to remember that they're still role-playing. Suddenly, a drop of sauce lands on Takane's leg. Alarmed, Koshi searches for a way to clean it up, worried that it might burn her. Takane, with a slight pout, feigns hurt, not from the sauce, but from the wasted food. Then she makes a shocking suggestion for Koshi to lick up instead. Koshi freezes, completely thrown off by her boldness. While he's too stunned to respond, Takane discreetly activates her ability. By the time he regains his senses, she is already grinning. She informs him that she rewound time, just enough to erase her earlier suggestion, and teasingly adds that it would have been funny to watch him lift the air. Koshi stares at her in disbelief, still trying to process what just happened. He wonders how she even activated her ability without him noticing. With a playful tug at her apron, Takane tells him to pay more attention or she'll keep gaining the upper hand. Then, with a smirk, she assures him that she will never let him lick her leg. After dinner, Koshi thanks Takane for the meal, admitting that it was delicious, though in truth he could barely taste any of it. He had been too nervous the entire time. Takane then announces she'll prepare a bath, prompting Koshi to offer to clean the dishes so she can enjoy her soap first. She pauses, glancing back at him, and suggests that they should go together since they are married. Koshi immediately refuses, insisting she go ahead while he waits for morning and the game is over. Seeing how genuinely flustered he is, she decides to stop teasing and lets him bathe first. As Koshi begins to wash himself in the bathroom, he notices Takane's shampoo sitting on the rack. Curious and almost feeling like he's being pulled by an invisible force, he slowly reaches for it. Just as his fingers are about to graze the bottle, the door opens and Takane steps in. Startled, Koshi tries to scold her, claiming she's taking the game too far, but she only smirks, catching him in the act. She retrieves the shampoo and playfully offers it to him as a souvenir. He refuses to look at her, assuming the worst, but she casually reveals she's wearing a bathing suit, so there's nothing inappropriate going on. Even with that reassurance, Koshi is too embarrassed to meet her gaze and promises to leave as soon as he's done. But Takane isn't done playing. She slips into character again, insisting that, as his wife, it's her job to wash his back. Deciding it's better not to argue, Koshi agrees to go along with her idea. He mentally prepares himself to stay calm, reminding himself that this is still part of the game. They're just acting. That illusion shatters the moment he feels Takane's hands gently touch his back. He freezes in place, his brain racing. Takane leans in close and whispers into his ear, expressing genuine surprise at how muscular he actually is. Koshi, flustered beyond belief, begins counting prime numbers in a desperate attempt to keep his thoughts from wandering. But the distraction fails when he feels something soft press against his back. Panicking, he dares to sneak a glance, only to discover that Takane has placed balloons between them, acting as a barrier to prevent any direct contact. After what feels like an eternity, she finishes rinsing his back. Koshi sighs inwardly, thinking he's finally made it through. But before he can relax, Takane suddenly moves in front of him, casually offering to wash his hair next. Koshi tries to protest, arguing weakly that they only agreed on the back. But Takane smoothly counters that she never said she would stop there, only that she would start there. With no way out, Koshi braces himself again as she begins lathering his hair. He tries to stay composed, but the moment she mentions that she's using her own shampoo on him, mental images of her overwhelm his thoughts. Unable to take it any longer, he stammers an excuse and dives into the bath, hoping to cool down. Takane opens her mouth to tease him but pauses, recognizing from his frantic reaction that she may have pushed too far. Her expression softens, and without another word, she hurriedly leaves the bathroom, letting him finish in peace. Alone at last, Koshi exhales deeply, the tension finally lifting from his shoulders. Later that night, lying awake in the guest room, he wonders why Takane always takes things to such extremes. Just then, he hears her voice from the hallway, reminding him to set his alarm since she's heading to bed too. Without warning, she walks in and climbs on top of him, declaring that as a higher being, she's more important than he is. Koshi looks up at her, and in that moment, it becomes clear. This whole game had just been her way of covering up her fear of the thunderstorm. As he stares at Takane looming above him, he knows the truth. There's no game he can ever win when it's against her. Days later, the two of them go on patrol at their town's summer fireworks festival. When Koshi arrives, Takane is already waiting, dressed in an elegant yukata. He notes that he is on time, but Takane points out that she always arrives 5 minutes early, so as her closest subordinate, he should have arrived 10 minutes before the agreed-upon time. She immediately decides to start patrolling and leads them to areas where students usually hang out. As Koshi follows her, he can't help but admire how graceful she looks in her yukata. After walking for a while, Takane deems the area safe enough for a break and asks Koshi to help her prepare to use her ability just in case. Koshi is confused, wondering when she even used it, since he didn't sense anything. Takane explains that she hasn't yet but forgot to do her usual preparations before leaving the house, so he needs to help her now. Koshi hesitates, noting how crowded the place is, but Takane assures him it's safe and that no one will be paying attention. Seeing Koshi struggle to come up with a discreet way to help, She pretends to ask him to fix her sandals. Koshi catches on and assists her. She thanks him in a tone that sounds unusually friendly, almost like a lover, which flusters him. Koshi quietly enjoys this side of Takane. He never expected her to sound so cute. Then Takane announces that it's nearly time for the fireworks and suggests they find a spot to watch. On the way, Koshi overhears murmurs from festival goers who assume he and Takane are a couple. The idea embarrasses him. In his mind, he's sure Takane would be less than thrilled to hear people mistaking them for lovers. He briefly imagines what being in an actual relationship with her would be like. He figures she'd still take the lead and treat him like a servant. As they pass by a couple nearby, Koshi hears the girl inviting her boyfriend to hang out more after the fireworks. It makes him wonder how such a scene would play out if it were him and Takane. His thoughts are interrupted when Takane suddenly calls his name. She determines there are no troublemakers in the area and activates her ability to rewind time, giving herself more time to check other spots before the fireworks begin. Koshi finds himself at the start of their patrol again, only this time Takane leads him somewhere else. They arrive in a place crowded with adult couples, and Koshi sees one pair sharing a kiss out in the open. Beside him, Takane asks for a drink, wanting a short break. Koshi backs away slightly, thinking she must have seen the same couple and fearing she might tease him again. He nervously pulls out a bottle of tea, briefly imagining a romantic scenario where they share a drink. Takane calls his name again, wondering why he's taking so long. When he hands her the bottle, she declines and instead asks for his help with her ability again. This same pattern repeats throughout the evening. After every patrol round, Takane rewinds time and takes them to a different area. Each time, Koshi notices her mood becoming increasingly subdued. Eventually, they end up in a quiet spot with no one else around. Koshi begins to wonder if he's the reason for Takane's change in demeanor. He reflects on her actions and starts to notice a pattern. Her mood shifts always happen after a break, right before she uses her ability again. A thought crosses his mind that Takane is trying to confess something to him, waiting for the perfect timing and setting, and the constant resets are her way of chasing that perfect moment. He quickly brushes off the idea, assuming he's just overthinking again. He knows she'll scold him if she catches him zoning out. Suddenly, the fireworks begin. Takane asks what he thinks of the view. Koshi responds that it's beautiful, stumbling over his words. Takane chuckles lightly at his flustered tone. As the fireworks light up the night sky, Koshi turns to her stunned. At that moment, both she and the fireworks are a breathtaking sight to behold. When the show ends, Takane calmly suggests they head home.